They set up the janitor as a joke, until the CEO spoke and the room fell silent. The restaurant was alive with chatter that afternoon, a chorus of laughter that was loud, careless, and unkind. Sunlight spilled to the tall glass windows, bouncing off polished crystal glasses and gleaming silverware. Waiters moved briskly between the tables, balancing trays of steaming plates, while the air smelled of roasted garlic, butter, and expensive wine. But for one man seated quietly at a corner table, the world felt far less bright. His name was Daniel Cole, a janitor whose life had long been reduced to endless shifts cleaning up after others. His hands bore the calluses of years of hard work. His nails always stained despite the scrubbing. His clothes were plain, his back slightly stooped, and his tired eyes carried the exhaustion of someone who had endured far too much without acknowledgement. Daniel had once dreamed of more, dreams of designing buildings, of tracing lines on blueprints deep into the night. He had studied once, believed in a future where his ideas might stand tall in concrete and steel. But life had crushed those hopes under the weight of sudden responsibility. His father's untimely death, medical bills, and the urgent need to keep food on the table had forced him into survival mode. Engineering textbooks gave way to mop handles and buckets. At Brookstone Enterprises, the company where Daniel worked, he was invisible. Executives in sharp suits passed him daily without a glance, their shoes tapping across the marble floors he polished. To them, he was no one, just another uniform in the background of their ambition. And it was in this same company that cruelty took shape one Friday afternoon. A group of young managers, high on arrogance and laughter during their long lunch, decided to make Daniel the center of a joke. They had noticed his quiet nature, his lack of social life, and whispered about how pathetic he looked pushing his cart of cleaning supplies. And so, with their wine glasses clinking, they devised a prank. They told Daniel that a woman had noticed him, a kind woman, someone touched by his gentle eyes and quiet strength. They spun a tale of a blind date, arranged just for him, as though someone out there actually saw worth in the janitor no one else cared to acknowledge. At first, Daniel resisted. He was not a man who clung to vanity. His reflection often reminded him of how the years had drained his youth, leaving only creases and fatigue. Yet, beneath the layers of loneliness, a small flame of hope flickered. The possibility of companionship, of someone seeing him, really seeing him, pulled at him like a lifeline. After years of solitude, the temptation was too strong. He agreed. What he didn't know was that the men had chosen a restaurant far above his world, a place of elegance and wealth, where they could watch the humiliation unfold. That Saturday evening, Daniel dressed in his best. His shirt, though old, was freshly pressed. His shoes, warm but polished, gleamed faintly under the fading sunlight. Around his wrist, he wore a watch his father had given him, a piece that held more value than gold ever could. Walking into the restaurant, he felt both pride and nervousness. The chandeliers overhead shimmered, and every table was draped in fine linen. It was a place he had never dared to step into on his own. He sat at a corner table, fidgeting with his watch, glancing toward the door with anxious hope. At the far end of the room, the young managers who had orchestrated the prank sat together, stifling laughter as they secretly recorded the scene. And then she walked in. Clara Winslow, CEO of Brookstone Enterprises, entered the restaurant with the quiet poise of someone who didn't need to demand attention. Her presence commanded it naturally. She wore a navy dress that was simple yet elegant, her auburn hair tied neatly at the back, her stride measured and graceful. At first, Daniel froze. This couldn't be real. Surely there was some mistake. What business would a woman of such stature have with a janitor like him? But Clara had learned of the cruel prank only minutes earlier. She had overheard the laughter, the smug whispers of the junior managers about the janitor waiting for a woman who would never arrive. She could have ignored it, pretended not to hear, and gone about her evening. But something stirred deep within her heart. Clara had grown up watching her mother work endless hours as a hotel maid, bowed under the weight of other people's messes. She remembered the humiliation her mother had endured, the way people would look through her as if she were furniture. Clara had vowed long ago that she would never allow someone to be degraded under her watch. So when she saw Daniel sitting nervously at the corner table, unaware of the trap, she made a decision. Clara walked straight to his table and, to the shock of the room, pulled out the chair across from him. Daniel blinked in confusion, nearly knocking over his glass of water. Surely this is a mistake. Clara gave a warm, steady smile. No mistake, Mr. Cole. I'm here for you. The restaurant grew silent. The laughter from the men in the corner faltered, their smirks replaced by frozen disbelief. Their prank had taken a turn they had never imagined. Daniel's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his shirt. He had no idea what was happening, but Clara's calm presence steadied him. As they ordered, Clara began to speak. Not of business, not profit margins or stock prices, but of respect, dignity, and unseen worth. Stock prices, but of respect, dignity, and unseen worth. She told him how society often valued people only by their titles, forgetting the world relied on those who labored quietly in the background. She spoke of her mother, who had scrubbed floors and ironed sheets while enduring disdain, and how that strength had shaped Clara into who she was. "You remind me of her," Clara said softly, her eyes fixed on Daniel's weathered face. "Not because of what you do, but because of the quiet resilience you carry." Every word hit Daniel like a wave. For years, he had endured invisibility, endured the sting of people mocking him behind his back, endured loneliness so heavy it threatened to crush him. And now, to hear the CEO herself not only acknowledge his existence but honor it was overwhelming. His throat tightened, and his eyes grew wet with unspilled tears. Around them, the air shifted. Conversation stilled. The young managers who had staged the cruel prank lowered their heads, squirming in shame. Their wine sat untouched. They had intended to make a man the butt of their joke, but instead, the joke had turned on them, exposing their own ugliness in front of everyone. By the time the dinner ended, no one in the restaurant was unmoved. The waitstaff looked at Daniel differently, with respect in their eyes. Other patrons, who had initially joined in the curious stares, now nodded toward him with quiet admiration. Daniel didn't just leave with a memory of kindness that night. He left with something much greater, dignity restored. When Monday came, Daniel walked into Brookstone Enterprises with his mop and bucket as usual, but the air felt different. Whispers traveled through the office halls about how the CEO had stood up for the janitor, how she had dismantled cruelty with compassion. People who had once brushed past him without a glance now greeted him with nods or soft words of respect. Some even offered apologies for years of overlooking him. For the first time in decades, Daniel felt visible, seen. Clara had not only defended him, she had transformed how others saw him, and, more importantly, how he saw himself. In the weeks that followed, Daniel noticed subtle changes. The managers who had plotted the prank were reprimanded quietly, their arrogance tempered. A new policy was announced at Brookstone, reinforcing respect and dignity for every employee, regardless of their role. But beyond policies, something deeper lingered. The story of that evening became company legend. It was retold in boardrooms, whispered over coffee, and carried by new employees as a lesson of culture. For Daniel, life was still humble. He continued to clean floors, push his cart, and clock in before dawn. But each day, he carried with him the reminder that he was not invisible, that his life had worth beyond measure. And Clara? She never forgot either. For her, that night wasn't about leadership strategy or corporate image. It was about humanity, about choosing to see someone when the world chose not to. Years later, when Daniel finally retired, his farewell gathering was unlike any other. Executives, assistants, interns, and staff from every corner of the company filled the room. Clara herself gave a speech, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "This man," she said, resting a hand on Daniel's shoulder, "taught us all what it means to truly see another human being. His strength, his humility, and his quiet endurance have left an imprint on this company far greater than any quarterly profit ever could." Tears filled Daniel's eyes once more, but this time they were not born of loneliness. They were born of pride. The prank that had been meant to humiliate him had instead rewritten his story. What was meant to crush his dignity had instead elevated it. And so the tale of the janitor and CEO lived on, not as a cruel joke, but as a timeless reminder that the worth of a person is never found in their title, but in the resilience of their soul and the kindness of those who choose to see it.